Hello and welcome to the channel. On today's story, I'm going to be sharing with you how to draft this beautiful gown with a stylish neckline yoke. So if it's your first time viewing my channel, please hit on the subscribe button. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and let's dive right into today's video. So first, I'm going to go ahead to mark out my basic measurements, which includes my shoulder to bust, shoulder to under bust, shoulder to waistline, and from that point you're going to mark 7 inches to get your hip line. But before doing that, I'm going to go ahead to mark the full length of my dress. So the actual length of this dress is about 36 inches, and I'm not going to be adding any turning up allowance at the lower part because you're going to add a flounce. Go ahead and add about ½ inch to give the lower part of your dress a good finishing. So if you notice, we stopped at 32 inches, so the remaining 4 inches is actually going to be a flounce. Or you can go ahead to use an organza fabric, any way you want to call it. Like, you're going to have a design at the lower part which is about 4 inches, which is going to make up the full length of the dress. So after doing that, I'm just going to go ahead to place my ruler and I'm going to draw out a straight line at each point that I have marked. So I've marked the full length of the dress. Now I have marked the waist, and now here is the under bust line, and after marking that, I'll go ahead to mark out the waistline of the bust line of this pattern. After that, I'll go ahead and label my pattern as bust, under bust, waist and gown length. So after I'm done outlining that, the next step is to go ahead to mark my shoulder. So my shoulder is 14 divided by 2. I have 7 inches, and I'll be adding half, making it 7.5, because this particular dress has a sleeve. Now I'll go down by 1 inch and I'll slant it down to my shoulder this way. So after that, I'm going to find my chest line, which is your bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches. So for mine is 7 inches, but for a plus size, you can do your bust circumference divided by 6 plus 2 inches in case your hand is big and to accommodate it very well. So after marking this, I will label it as chest line, and the next step is to go ahead to mark our dart intake. So I'm going to mark my nipple to nipple divided by 2, which is 7 divided by 2. I have 3.5. I'll go ahead to mark it. At the waistline, I'll also mark it. So for the dart at the lower part is going to stop at 6 inches, or you can just extend your line down to your hip point. After that, I'll go ahead and place my ruler and I'm going to connect the line. Note, the dart is going to stop 6 inches after your waistline. Now, I'm going to mark my dart, which is my shoulder to bust plus 1 inch, or you can come down by 1 inch from the bust line. Mark ½ inch on both sides and you're going to extend it up to that bust plus 1 inch at the upper part, and at the lower part you're also going to place your ruler and you're going to connect to it this way. So after you're done connecting, I'm going to go ahead to mark 7 inches, which is my hip line, and I'm going to rule out a line at that point. After that, I'm going to impute my body circumference, which is my bust circumference divided by 4, and I'll add my sewing allowance. So after marking that, I'm just going to go ahead to mark my under bust circumference, which is 28 divided by 4. I have 7 inches. Go ahead and measure the dart intake. Whatever that you mark, you're going to replace it and add my sewing allowance. At the waistline, I'm going to mark the waist circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake, and I'm going to go ahead to replace it and I'll mark my sewing allowance. At the hip line, I'm going to go ahead to mark my hip circumference divided by 4. So my hip circumference is 40 divided by 4. I have 10, and go ahead to add my sewing allowance. So if you're actually making this dress, you can go ahead to use 1.5 or 2 inches or more sewing as allowance as you desire. So this is a drafting pattern, so I don't need much allowance for this. So for the lower part, whatever you have on your hip, that is, my hip is 40 divided by 4. I have 10 plus your sewing allowance, assuming we are using 2 inches for our sewing allowance, so I'm going to have 12 inches. So that 12 inches, I'm going to minus 2 inches from there just to get what I'm going to mark at the lower part of the dress, because you want the lower part of your dress to be fitted. And after that, I'm going to go ahead to use my marker and I'm going to connect. After connecting on this point, I'm going to go ahead to make use of my French curve. I'm going to connect from the hip down to the waistline, because this part of your body is not so straight, and I'll come down a little so that there won't be too curvy, and I'll connect it down to the lower part of my dress this way. So I'm going to go ahead to use my marker and I'll go ahead to outline all my pattern so that it's going to be more visible for you to see. So I extended the line down to the hip point. So now we're going to work on the upper part of our dress. Go ahead and divide what you have here into two. Go in by ½ inch, and now I'm going to take my French curve, place it, connect to the ½ inch, and I'll connect it back to the shoulder point this way. So after I'm done doing that, the next step is to go ahead is to mark out the yoke part of my dress. So now I'm going to place and mark 0.75 above my chest line. So you can use ½ inch to do that, but I'm just going to make use of 0.75 inches. And after I'm done marking that, I'm going to place my ruler and I'm going to draw a straight line at that point. Now at the upper part, I'm going to go ahead to mark my basic neck, which is 3 inches, and from that point I'm going to place my ruler and connect it to the lower part this way. After I'm done doing that, I'm just going to go ahead to outline that part so that it's going to be more visible for you to see. Now I'm going to place my tape at this point and I'll mark 1.5 inches coming from the armhole area, and I'm going to connect it to the upper part of my neckline this way. I'm going to go ahead and place my tape and I'll come down by 3 inches. So you can come down by 2, 2.5 or 3 inches. Make a point at that place, and I'm going to mark 1 inch from this point. So now I'm going to place my ruler and I'll go ahead to connect. So on this part, this is what I have, and I'll outline the lower part, which is the mark after my chest line. So with this, we're done drafting the front pattern, and the next step is to go ahead to cut this out. So at this point, if you find this tutorial very interesting and educative, please don't forget to hit on the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and if you have any question regarding this tutorial, please leave your question at the comment section. So now I'm going to make a mark at where all my yoke will stop on my main pattern. So I'll continue and go ahead to cut it out. And after cutting, I'm just going to notch those parts that my yoke is going to meet, and this is what I have for the front pattern. Heading over to our back pattern, I went ahead to extend all those lines that we have at the front pattern just at the back. So now we are going to start placing our measurement, and I'll mark my shoulder divided by 2 plus half. Go ahead, go down by 1 inch, mark my shoulder slope, and whatever I have at the shoulder, I'll mark it at the chest line, place my ruler, and I will draw out. Now I'm going to divide my armhole into 2. This pattern we are doing for the back is just a basic back pattern. After marking that ½ inch, I'll come out by ½ inch. Now I will mark my bust circumference. Remember, all the measurements we are taking at the back is starting after the zipper, and I'll go ahead to draw out my armhole for this part. So now after I'm done doing this, I'm going to go ahead to mark my neckline, which is 3 inches, and I'll be using 2 inches at this point. Now I'm going to take my French curve, connect, and I will draw out. So you can go ahead to use your freehand sketch if you don't have a French curve. Now after I'm done doing this, I'll go ahead to draw out my dart intake first before inserting my body measurements. But at the bust, there's no dart, so I'll mark my bust circumference and I'll go ahead to mark my sewing allowance. So I'll go ahead to mark my nipple to nipple divided by 2, just like the same way we did at the front part, and I'm going to stop at 6 inches above the hip line, which is 7 inches from your waist. Now I'm going to go ahead to place my ruler and I'm going to draw connecting a straight line at that point. So now I'll be marking ½ inch at both sides, and after marking that, I'm going to go ahead to come down by 1 inch from my bust point, and I'm going to connect it back just like we did for the front. And after doing that, I'll go ahead to connect for the lower part of this pattern. So after I'm done connecting, I'm done with my dart. The next step is to insert my body measurement. Now I'm going to mark my under bust circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake, replace and mark my sewing allowance. At the waistline, I'll mark my waist circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake, replace it and add my sewing allowance. Now at the hip point, I'm going to mark my hip circumference divided by 4 and I'll add my sewing allowance. So all your measurement is going to start at the after your zipper allowance. So now I'll minus 2 inches from my hip point and I'll mark. Next, I'm just going to go ahead to connect all my pattern. I'll be using a French curve at this part because the body is a little curvy. After that point, I'll extend and connect to the lower part of my pattern. So after I'm done connecting, the next thing I'm going to do is to go ahead to outline all my pattern, and after I'm done outlining it, the next step I would take is to go ahead to get rid of the bulginess that is at the back of the dress. But before doing that, I'm just going to go ahead to cut out my pattern so that it will be easier for me to work with. So to get rid of bulginess, I'm going to go in by ½ inch at my waistline and I'm going to extend it down to the hip point, and I'll extend it also to the chest line. And the next step is just to go ahead to cut this out. So with this, we are done drafting the back pattern, and in our next video we are going to go ahead to cut out the sleeve of this dress and also if you haven't yet subscribed, please don't forget to of the dress. Hit on the subscribe button in our next video. Give this video a thumbs up and see you in our next video. Thanks.